Here we are. Welcome to Living Undeterred. I'm Jeff Johnston, and I am honored and blessed today to be with the average dude, Daniel Allison. How you doing, my friend?
Doing good. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Now, I have to preface this. I think you look great, but I know right now you're on what number day now battling COVID?
This tomorrow, I'm on day 13.
Okay.
So tomorrow will be day 14, and feel like I've turned the corner. So I'm actually feeling grateful that I've turned the corner and start feeling a little better. So
I know we had this scheduled for last week, and you were like, "No, I don't want to be below average, dude. I want to be the
yeah,
average dude."
yeah. You don't want me below average. You don't want me
No, but
below
your
average.
below average is still better. But no, I'm excited. You are. This will be my third podcast, so I'll tell you a little bit about where this all went. But I felt like, in a way, I kind of owed you the opportunity to reverse the roles because you had me on a guest as a
Yep.
guest on your Average Dude podcast. Oh, it was, I don't know, a while back. I think it was September, October.
Yeah.
Why don't you just tell a little bit about why you call yourself the average dude,
Yeah.
which I disagree with that statement adamantly about you, but and kind of how your presence has been on social media. I know on LinkedIn you have a lot of really neat posts and comments, and maybe just a little bit of background about you for the listeners and watchers today.
Yeah. So I got into personal development 5 years ago. So, well, I say 5 years, 11, 11, 14. I have the exact date when I started kind of really focusing on self improvement and doing things to improve, to get better. And, uh, and part of that journey was going to Toastmasters and working on my public speaking skills. And as we've kind of moved forward, that has kind of allowed me to start doing some things like videos and wanting to do podcasting and more communication driven activities. And so it started out with some LinkedIn posts, doing some videos. And then I said, you know what? I want to try doing a podcast. So the way that the average dude came about, it was a spur of the moment. I said, you know what? I've been talking about doing a podcast. I got on Anchor, which is just
Hmm.
the free podcast app, and it said record your first episode. And so I was literally sitting there and I said, you know what? I think I'm just going to talk about being average, just being the average dude. And I've always been fascinated by that topic because I think as humans, we want to be more than just another human. There's
Right.
7 billion of us. And so everybody is playing the game of how can I be something more than just another, drop in the bucket. And I think that that's okay, but I also think it's okay to kind of state the obvious, which is, hey, the truth is we are just another drop in the bucket. The world's going to move on without me or Jeff or anybody. Anybody at a certain point is no longer going to be here, and the world will continue. And so, if we look at enough variables, or if we look at large enough data set, we're all pretty average, right? Even
Yeah,
even your boys that good they are at golf, you put them in the right all of a sudden they're average if they're around the right group.
yeah, you're right about that, and I think it'd be kind of interesting to tell. I've never met you personally, and I'm sure you can relate to this. Sometimes you meet people by happenstance, and you feel like you've known them for since college.
Yeah,
And I have never met you personally, nor have I met Steve Grant, who was
yeah,
maybe the facilitator. How you and I hooked up was uh, me reaching out to Steve. And by the way, Steve was my second guest for the Living
yeah,
Undeterred podcast. My first guest was my
yeah.
two
Big,
boys.
great.
Yeah,
Okay.
Roman and Ian and I were my first podcast, which is coming out next week. But then I had Steve on as my second guest, and I figured I had to start with him because him and I both, unfortunately, are members of a club that we didn't ask to join.
Right.
Nonetheless, we're in it. And then I met you through Steve, and
Yeah.
you had interviewed Steve, I think, on your podcast. And then
Mm-hmm.
I listened to your podcast, and I said, "Man, this guy sounds like he really knows what he's talking about." And you were very good at navigating Steve through me as a listener to your podcast and losing a child to heroin, like Steve had lost two sons to overdose.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I gotta call this guy, or I gotta reach out to him. So I private messaged you on LinkedIn, and then next thing you know, I'm a guest on your show, and now you're a guest on my show. And
Yeah.
but yeah, I just
Pretty amazing how we can all connect these days. What's that? I'm sorry.
How'd you meet Steve? I guess.
Yeah, so I met Steve. That was actually a pretty cool story. I was doing some networking, just local business sales networking, and someone that I was talking to, they said, "Hey, what account could I help you with?" And there was one account that I had in mind that I was working on. It's St. Joseph Catholic School, and I had no idea that I didn't know Steve Grant, but he said, "Well, I'm gonna send down an email." This person that I'm meeting with, his name's Will May, and Will said, "Daniel, I want to try to help you, get into that account." I said, "Well, you're more than welcome to try," but I didn't hold out much hope. He sends out an email, and he ends up hooking up with Steve Grant. And of course, Steve Grant, his boys went to St. Joseph Catholic School. Steve coached baseball out there. And Steve ended up calling me and saying, "Hey, I know the headmaster out there and would love to help you." We talked for like 15 minutes. And I mean, I was amazed at how nice Steve was. I mean, we didn't know each other, but through this one contact. Long story short, he sent an email. He read it by me, and he said, "Would this be okay to send to the headmaster?" I was like, "Absolutely." I mean, it was a fantastic, professional, great email. 2 weeks later, they called me, and we ended up getting that account. So that's how I met Steve.
Interesting. And I met Steve. I found his book somewhere in one of the websites I was on about grieving for losing a child, or some addiction website, and I saw "Don't Forget Me." Wrote in honor of Chris and Kelly, who died, I think, 5 years apart, almost 20 years ago. Steve's only two boys, and people ask me sometimes, what's your inspiration, Jeff? I mean, you lost a child, and you're now battling through losing a marriage, and what keeps you going? And I said, people like Steve Grant keeps me going. I have two of my three boys still here.
Yeah.
He is only two. And so when I interviewed Steve last week, I asked him, how did you end up not joining Chris and Kelly through what you went through? And people will have to listen to my podcast to get his answer. But, I tell you what, this journey I've been on, Seth's been gone now since October 4th, 2016. But every time I tell the story, I lose a little piece of me, but I pick up a piece of something else, whether it's wisdom or knowledge or a new relationship. And I have just met more people, more tremendous human beings in the last pretty much, I'd say, 2 or 3 years than I've ever met in my life combined. And ironically, none of it's been in the financial services industry necessarily, which is really where I've been in this business for 32 years. And so, you kind of throw your hat in the ring when life throws you a curveball. And that's probably where I wanted to start with you today, Daniel, is, one of the things that I admire about you, and people around here will see your posts and they'll text me, who's this average dude guy that you introduced me to? There's something about your storytelling. There's something about your accent, your smile, your charm, whatever it is. You kind of lure people in with your stories. And I really like the fact that, and I know you're going to maybe make a comment on this, but when I watch people talk, you can tell the ones that are reading off a script, rehearsed. It sounds, I don't know, not intriguing to me. You never have looked like, and I think you had an 8-minute post one time, never looked like you ever had even a sticky note on the side of your phone when you're doing your podcast, your videos. So you're genuine, and that I think's been very successful for you. So maybe, where does your inspiration come from? What tragedy or trauma have you dealt with growing up that has made you look at life maybe in a whole different aspect?
Yeah, so the way that I do the LinkedIn post specifically, I just go with, the best time to act is when that emotion is high. So if the idea comes to me, then I don't waste any time in taking action on that thought that's so it's top of mind, and I think that, in other words, sometimes messages lose their effectiveness if the longer we wait between that first time we have an idea. So that's kind of the neat thing with like LinkedIn. If you have a thought and you're in the shower, sometimes I'll hurry up and dry my hair because I'm like, okay, I feel it right now. I need to hit record because this message is hot. And so I will, that's kind of how I do it. In other words, I think some of the messages that I think, hey, at this point in the game, there's, especially in self-improvement, everything's been said at least once. We've heard, so really all that we can give as folks that are trying to produce some content, trying to bring some value, is that extra little oomph that we can give it. And that comes from when we first think about it. When we first think about whatever the idea is, that's the time to hit record.
Yeah, and I think that social media has got plenty of motivational conversations and videos, and to the point where it almost can be, people can get immune to it.
Yeah.
I know I talked to an individual who had a drinking problem a while ago, and she was like, I'm tired of people telling me just to fight, dig deep, and do all this stuff. It's like they almost put up the barriers because people were being too supportive to them. And I know my life, when I look back at some of the not confrontations, but some of the conversations I've had with people that have had substance abuse problems. Sometimes they do put up those walls, and there's almost too much information out there to help people. So how do you avoid just being another positive smiley face on LinkedIn? How do you make your thing different, Dan?
Yeah, I think the difference I say the difference. Let me just say it this way. I do the things that I do, the journaling and talking about the things that I talk about. It's not, the gimmick isn't to get rich or to do any. Hey, it's nice to get the pats on the back, but I'm doing it more for my own psychology. In other words, it feels good for me to make a message about something that's happening to me, that I'm going through, and I can use that LinkedIn almost as accountability and also just to talk about what's important to me. I mean, again, I'm doing the journaling, the exercising, all of the things that go into personal growth and personal improvement. I'm doing it because I need to do it to control my own psychology. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
That's first and foremost. Like, more than anything else, I'm doing it for me because I need to do it in order to keep myself between the lines.
Do you ever worry about becoming addicted to your vulnerability? I know I have a blog coming out next week. It's called My Addiction to Vulnerability. And my point was that I've told my story so many times that now it just has become where I don't want to be that guy where I walk into a room and everyone splits up saying, here comes Jeff talking about his deceased child again. I don't want to be that guy where my story has defined me, where it actually is doing more damage than good. And so I think for me, in being vulnerable, I need to be very cognizant that as much as I am sincerely, with the best intentions, trying to help people, I could also turn people off if I present this too aggressively. Do you, in telling your story, I know you and I have talked after hours, off the show on our cell phones about some personal things that you and I have been through. Do you ever worry about maybe divulging too much where that vulnerability may adversely affect you in any way?
I do. I think that it's important to, it's actually something that I've been thinking a lot. Obviously, this time being by myself, I haven't felt like doing a post on LinkedIn. So I don't even have that connection with the LinkedIn group. This is the first thing that I've really done and connected and communicated with anybody. And so it gave me a lot of time to do a lot of self-reflection and a lot of thinking. And I think what we have to be careful of is, hey, it's great to be humble and to be vulnerable and that sort of thing. But a lot of good comes from a little bit of aggression too. In other words, we can't castrate ourselves so much that we lose that vigor that gets things done, and so I think that it's important to, to stay balanced with that, and know that we can't always. I don't know. The way that I wrote it is there's a time for being humble, then there's a time for being confident, and there's a lot of these kind of parallels. This light and dark, we don't have the light without the darkness, or whatever, however that goes. But I just think that there's a certain balance that comes in if we want to be effective. And I think that part of being vulnerable is to answer your question, and I don't have the answer, but I do think that vulnerability can be overdone. And if it's being used just as a mechanism to get people to connect with you, then I think that that's something that we have to keep our eyes on. And just really what it comes down to is, how do we want to, and this, I'm getting off track a little bit here, but how do I personally want to spend my life, my time and energy that I have left on this earth, and what's the goal? How can I be effective in doing, because that's our purpose, Right. I mean, in other words, I've only got a certain amount of time and energy left, and we all do. And the question that we have to ask is, how do I want to spend that? And so once we kind of say, this is what I want to do, well, then it's our job to tweak and to massage our approach in order to be most effective that we can be. So
the word success is such a subjective word. I mean, I'm 54 years old, and I defined success, 10 years ago as the type of car I drove, how big my house was, what color my cufflinks were on my French cuff shirt. That was important to me. Now I could average dude tie-dye shirt today for our conversation. It's like, I don't really care about that stuff anymore. I actually made a post the other day, yesterday, where I had someone ask me on an interview on a podcast I was on, how are your book sales going, Jeff? And I said, I don't know, and I don't care. Because the minute I start quantifying my book sales, I'm going to lose the reason why I wrote the book. I wrote the book for two things: to honor my son who's not here, to continue his legacy, and to raise awareness to substance abuse, mental health, and addiction for people that need it. And that was my objective. And I'm sure when you go through your journey about your podcast and all the stuff you're doing, do you struggle with trying to find a financial incentive in what you're doing, or do you feel very comfortable now being driven by a passion that's non-financial?
I would say this. I would say just part of my number one driving force is social acceptance, more so than money. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily a good thing. I think that it would probably be a good idea for me to be a little bit more driven for money, because I can then provide for those that I care and love in a more effective way, and that's going to help them. So I'm not saying that is by any means, that drive for social acceptance. I know where that comes from, but I also know that it probably holds me back and probably dangles the carrot in the wrong way sometimes too. Right. But also what maybe makes me interesting for people to listen to in a certain kind of way. So it's funny. I don't handicap or handcuff myself to any particular path. I've got the free. I think what I have at this point in the game is that ability to change direction if that's what motivates me. And so if I need to change and I need to try something new, then that's what I will do. With that being said, if there's a way to monetize, there's things that I'm doing right now that aren't directly linked to the average dude. It's part of it, but it's helping me in other ways, right, giving me a little more exposure and helping me become a better communicator, which is in turn put me in position to make more money. So in a roundabout way, the average dude is helping, whether I monetize the average dude or not in any way, it's helping me become more effective in what I do make money with.
Who have been the biggest influences in your life?
Um, I would say my dad is the biggest influence and the person that keeps me grounded the most, and obviously from a DNA and who I was around the most, he's had the most impact in my life. That being said, I've also been fortunate. I've worked in a lot of different industries as the sales guy. So very often I would come in and be the right hand man to the business mind, the guy that is making business decisions. And so I've been in a lot of different businesses, different industries. And so I've gotten to see these really smart guys operate in their pond and do their thing. And that exposure has helped me a lot. I mean, it's helped me to kind of compile this database of because if you swim in the same type of pond, you get a little bit of that repeat. In other words, if you're in the insurance business, then you might see a lot of the guys that have similar traits. But if you're in insurance and then you go into construction, well, this is a totally different skill set, and you pick up on new things. And so I've been able to observe how they handle themselves, and that. So I've been influenced by a lot of different people because, and I'd say unfortunately, but fortunately, unfortunately I've jumped around a lot, which wasn't always a good thing. But fortunately, also jumping around has given me exposure to those different personalities and skill sets.
It definitely makes a difference. My biggest mentors, other than the obvious, parent stuff, have been mostly industry related people that I met early in my career, and old insurance guys that taught me how to sell life insurance door to door early in my career. That were very good people. The product they selling probably wasn't the best, but the people weren't buying the product; they were buying the person. And I kind of learned that's what people end up buying. And I watched some of your some of the videos you do, what you did on a sales call that you made. And I think the moral of the story was that, whether you made the sale or not, ultimately it's all about the relationship you have with that potential customer. I was going to ask you, again, my ADD is kind of in full blown here, so I have questions here I want to ask you. But you and I have talked about this in the past. I'm not sure how comfortable you are about divulging some hurdles that you have cleared in your past. I know for me, I was an alcoholic. I was a compulsive gambler, which really, being in the investment business, probably is not something to confess. But this was a long time ago. But you know what? I don't really care anymore. I'm 54. I don't care what people think about me. And hopefully, there's somebody out there that is struggling with compulsive gambling or alcoholism that is saying, "Hey, I admire Jeff for opening up about that, being in this business." Again, that's an area that I was advised not to talk about. Let me ask you this question. You and I have talked about this a lot. What's your thoughts on when it comes to addiction and substance abuse? And I try to throw this out to anyone I talk to. In regards to the disease model approach that is primarily driven by a large percentage of the population. And then there's those that are more on the choice method, where they believe that people aren't as powerless as they believe they are with alcohol and substance abuse, and that it's more of just, instead of taking mind-altering drugs and chemicals, let's just learn to alter our mind. Kind of that Occam's razor concept. In two choices, the simplest idea is normally the best. What's your thoughts on disease versus choice? Have you put much thought into it? And how does that help you personally when you battle some of the things that you have battled in the past?
It's not something you've asked me the question. It's not something that I normally talk about, but you did ask me the question. So what I would say is that anytime you take power from someone, in other words, when we tell someone that they have a disease, that typically that means that they're less powerful. So they're less in control, and it gives them a reason or even just a mindset of, okay, I am out of control. as humans, what we really want, we want that freedom and we want that power and we want that control, not to dominate others, but so that we are in full control of our mental capacity and we're in control. Control feels good and that feels powerful. I have been, I guess, presented with different ideas from different methodologies and things when it comes to how to deal with addiction and addictive tendencies. And I think that runs the gamut, whether we're talking about food, sex, or drugs or gambling. I mean, I think it's all of the same. It's that control and power. I think the arguments that are made for the disease portion of let's say, substance abuse, that the same mechanisms, psychologically speaking, are at play when we talk about gambling and things of this nature. We need a distraction. We need something to get us out of, to help us keep our own psychology above the realities of day-to-day living, which can be a struggle. And so we shove different things and distract different things, but I think that when someone says what has helped me in the past was one particular gentleman, and this was back when I was 22 years old, and the tools that he gave me, I put in my toolbox. I didn't use those tools, but I knew when I heard it, it resonated as truth to me. His name was Jack Trempy, and he talked about recognition of addictive thoughts in our minds. And that recognition of, hey, there's the mind wanting to pull me back down this path again, and I know what's going on. And once we recognize what's happening internally, then we have control. It's once we see what our mind is telling us, then we can kind of see through the illusion. And then regardless of where we are, let's say it's once we have that recognition, regardless of where we are in the scenario, let's say we have a problem with alcohol, and I decide that I'm going to go have a beer, and or maybe it's better if we call our dealer, right? So we pick up the phone call, we call him, and I'm 30 minutes away. And then we put the phone down, and now all of this time, we still have the ability to stop. We still have, if we recognize that we're in control, then any time before we so then he brings it to us, and it's right there in front of us. Before we ingest that substance, we still have an opportunity to take control. And so again, it comes back to that recognition of what's happening and a decision to say, okay, I can be more powerful. That being said, Jeff, I also have empathy for folks that are caught up in the addictive cycle. Sometimes it's chemically addictive.
Right.
And other times it's just like anyone that trying to tell someone that's depressed to, hey, you need to feel better. That is very much the same as telling someone they are using this as in such a way where it doesn't matter if it's a disease or not. They're so caught up in it, they think they need it.
Exactly.
And so it doesn't really matter if I'd hate to point at someone and say, oh, you're in control and you have power. That's not when it's going to work. That'd be just like telling somebody that's depressed, well, you need to feel better. That's not going to be effective. Yep. But when we can get to their ear, when they are craving that power and control, we all are. We all want to feel powerful and in control of our own psychology. And so when you can give that to someone and say, hey, you know what? Maybe you're more powerful than you think, or maybe you're not. I like to be kind of challenged like that. Right. In other words, when somebody says, well, maybe, I thought you were a strong, powerful person that could be in control. You seem like you're a pretty sharp individual. But maybe I'm wrong, So I guess sometimes that can be planted as a kind of a motivation. Yes, I am powerful. I am in control. Okay, well, show me with the thing that is taking you down, which is this substance or this lifestyle, But any way that we can motivate someone, and I say it in that way because I did have someone later on in my life that gave it to me in that particular way. Kind of like, well, maybe, and that's when that tool that Jack Trempy gave to me back when I was 22 years old, I knew I had that tool in my toolbox. I knew I did have control.
I think it's amazing, and I have so many roads I could go down by me throwing out this question to you. But I remember you telling me a few months ago, we were talking on the phone, and you had told me, because I was asking the same question about you, because I'm always interesting for material when I do my blogs, and
Yeah.
you said, well, it isn't just you choose to have the beer or not. It's a set of choices. You choose to walk to the refrigerator. You choose to open the door. You choose to grab the bottle. You choose to open the lid. It's like 100 little baby choices. If you can just cut one of those off, then you're not going to end up with that beer in your mouth drinking alcohol. And I thought that's brilliant, because I think too many alcoholics sit around thinking it's me versus that beer. No, it's you versus the first decision to get up off the couch to get the beer. I thought that was brilliant, and I had never heard it put that way. So I'll give you kudos for that. And I actually have kind of incorporated that into my most recent blog, which I called Drown the Beast. And it's in the concept that for a lot of people that are battling this, it becomes almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. I see all these people on social media talking about the sobriety, and all they're doing is talking about alcohol. And I'm like, what you're subconsciously doing is feeding the beast inside of you. And if you can just find ways to just kill alcohol, just don't give it any power over you, and simply by just stop talking about it. And I'm not sure, for me that works. To me, alcohol's dead to me. I don't torture myself with this, today the day I'm going to fall off the wagon, or am I out in social media saying I've not had a beer for 297 days. It's like, that's putting too much pressure on me. I'm not a robot. I'm a human. And if I decide to have a beer today, I sure in hell am not going to torture myself that my alcoholism won and I'm a loser and the self-loathing and now it just all starts blowing up in front of me. So you said the key word, Daniel, you said mindset. Yeah. And I know you and I practice meditation. Yeah. Would you like to maybe comment how long you've been meditating, how you think that's helped you with maybe addiction, things like that, and what would you say to somebody who's considering meditation?
Yes, all of that. I would say that one thing that you made me think about, as far as those decision trees, and we talk about, okay, I have all of these opportunities to take control. All we have to be strong and powerful in is this moment. In other words, just like you're talking about, when I get up, I go to the refrigerator, I've got, so I brought the beer home. Well, I've already screwed up. I'm going to drink the 12-pack. No, you still, every moment is a moment to take control and have power. So you drink 3 beers, you drink 4 beers, at a certain point you start losing your cognitive decision-making ability. But until then, you say, I am strong in this moment. And that's what meditation is all about. Look, the most powerful position that we can, as a human, that we can be in is to have is right here and now. This is where all of the decisions are made. This is where our destiny is designed. This is where all of the power is. So it's this ability to block out past and future and come into this moment and say, you know what, I'm going to own this moment. I am the master of this moment. That's something that I write pretty often. I am the master of this moment, because I don't have to be a master of anything else, because this decision is the most important decision. And so I think that, it's a way, meditation is pointing to that fact, so it's okay. This moment is where the money is. If I can own this moment, then that's all I need to do. And it's not just with preventing ourselves from doing addictive things. It certainly is helpful in that regard, but it's anytime we can say, forget what's happened, forget how bad the day's been, forget everything that's happened how bad the day, the week, the hour, the minute, whatever. I am in this moment, and what's the best action I can take right now?
In a way, meditation's not in a way, but for a fact, meditation has helped me deal with the death of Seth. And from the standpoint that my view of death and dying is probably different than most people listening to you and I talk right now, in that I will only go in my past if I can unearth positive feelings and emotions. I'm not going to go backwards and dig up negative feelings and emotions, because I'm going to pull those back up to the current. And so when I honor Seth, and I cry every day. I mean, I told you I cry at least 4 times a day.
Yeah.
But the weight of the tears, the essence of the tears, is completely different than it was when Seth first died. And I'm trying to teach people that are dealing with some type of trauma, is that by allowing yourself to go back in time and basically opening up those boxes of suffering and all that, you're just never going to find a way to move on with your life. And I'm not saying people have to forget about trauma or deny it existed, but accept it as part of your legacy. It's part of your story. And I write in my book about my 12 daily steps. I mean, trauma and addiction aren't going to go away. They're part of what defined you. I don't want to ever wake up and say, okay, I got over my son's death. I'm done. That is a foolish proposition. I'm not going to set myself up to wake up and say, boom, I'm an alcoholic and I'm sober now. It's like, nah, I'm just choosing today not to drink. And I'm choosing today not to have the suffering of Seth's death drag me down. Tomorrow, I don't know. Hell, I may not even make it to tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not going to waste time worrying about tomorrow, and I'm definitely not going to waste my energy on what's already happened, because hindsight's always 100% accurate. You can always look back and be judgmental of your decisions. But, again, to me, it's more of a learning process. So you mentioned the mindset thing, and it made me think of a podcast I heard from Russell Brand. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of his podcast, but
oh yeah, he's good.
Interesting character. But he was talking about the concept of I, and you had kind of hinted on that for a moment. And he's like, there really isn't an I. There's we. You have a talker and a listener in your head. And all day long, you go back and forth with this conversation, and you're like the mediator in the middle. And he says at some point, you got to pick a side. Are you the listener? Are you the follower? Or are you the leader? Are you the talker? So you're sitting on the couch, you want to have a beer. Which one are you? Are you the follower? You're going to get up, open the fridge, and have a beer. Or are you the talker? You're the leader. You're the boss of your brain. You're going to say, no, I'm just not going to get off the couch. And when Russell Brand said that, he didn't say it as hacked up as I just said it, but the way he said it,
No,
I'm like you. I'm in the shower listening to a podcast. I'm like, damn, I got to write this down.
Draw off quick.
Yeah, because with ADD, and you have it too, it's like ideas come in and then they just disappear quickly. And so I got to write things down constantly. But it's like some of those ideas have helped me navigate through my stress and what I deal with the suffering that I went through. And a sentence I like to say is that pain is unavoidable, but suffering is a choice. And I'm not sure if I got that from Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning, because I know he says suffering is my opportunity. That's what he writes in Man's Search for Meaning, which, by the way, if anyone hasn't read that book, that has to be on your top of the list for the 2021. Next to my book, this one's for you.
There you go. Get that plug in.
I'm not going to show a picture because that would be tacky, but no, I mean, so Man's Search for Meaning, and then this one's for you. That's the order you want to read. No, but that book is a great book, because Viktor Frankl survived the Holocaust, the concentration camps, and he told himself every day is I can't control what the guards are going to do to me. I can't control what they're going to not feed me or feed me. I can't control if I'm going to live or die, but I can control the attitude I have right in this moment.
Yeah, Jeff, you made me think here. I've got to, so that going back to that power in the moment, that control in the moment, and that decision-making process of who's, like you were talking about with Russell, he says, who's driving the bus, so to speak. I think that it's a good idea anytime that we can almost manufacture an environment where we are playing with the same characters, if you will. In other words, if the reason I take a cold shower is because that is the same decision. There's one part of your mind that's saying, no, I don't want to get in a cold shower. The other part is saying, hey, this is better than coffee, and you're going to get out of that and you're going to have more energy. You need to get in that shower. Who are you going to listen to? You know, the alarm clock goes off. Oh my God, this bed feels so fantastic. I want to lay here a little longer. Or, hey, I know that if I get up without hitting snooze, I'm going to feel better. And again, this is the same sort of negotiating and the same characters at play with when we talk about substances or any decision. It's like, hey, how do you want to feel? What action do you need to take in order to feel that way? Oh, I don't want to have a headache, a hangover. Well, then you better have a 2-beer limit or you're going to have one.
Right.
And so the brain says, man, this feels good. Let me continue. And so I know that there's been all kinds of little test environments with the kids and the marshmallows, and there's been all sorts of little, the kid says, oh, I forget exactly how the experiment's done, but my point is delaying gratification, being in control, doing what might be difficult now because you want to feel a certain way later. The mind is always wanting to negotiate, and we have these characters in our minds. And so anytime that we can manufacture that, it's like going to the gym. It's working that muscle, and then just the scenario will change. But, we still have that ability.
It makes me think of a conversation I had about a year ago when I was researching for my book. And I was very hesitant in trying to take a position publicly on this whole disease choice type model, because it's like, is there a God or isn't there a God? And when people are set on one side, they ain't budging. And so I was talking to an alcoholic friend of mine, and this person was pretty convinced that the reason they drink is because their parents did and their grandparents did, and it's hereditary. But they kept struggling with alcoholism. And I said, okay, I'm not going to argue with you whether it's a disease or a choice. The fact is, since you are convinced it's a disease, how has that been working out for you? How's that ideology? How's that strategy working? And they said, well, it hasn't. I said, well, why not add another arrow to your quiver? Why not trick your brain? I mean, what do you have to lose? You're drinking anyway. Why not trick your brain
Right.
if you don't have a disease? And even if you do, maybe your brain will override it and short circuit the fact that you have a disease. I just think when people say,
I think that's a great idea.
I got stacks of evidence here that will say alcoholism is a disease. Sure, alcoholism is a disease. Abuse of alcohol may not be. So
Right.
I'll give that whole argument to the people that want to say to me, well, Jeff, you're not a doctor. You're just a grieving father and an addict. Sure, no question. However, I'll give you full merit that addiction could be disease generated. It could be hereditary. I don't think having 20 beers is. I think the abuse of the substance is where I think the choice really comes into play. And if you are an addict and you're struggling with alcohol and you're convinced it's a disease and you still are struggling, well, then you need to add another way to look at this. And then you have both methods. What do you have?
That's right.
At the end of the day, being right is not even the issue here. It's getting you to something. That's all that matters.
Right.
So I don't care if you're right. The fact is, whatever you believe, is it helping you fight the addiction and the abuse that you have? And that's where.
No, I think that's very well said. I think that's a great idea. I think that like you say, what do you have to lose?
Right.
And a lot of times we fall back into that intellectual, I've got to be right, or this feels better for me to be right. When, like you say, you have nothing to lose. Go ahead and let go of that belief, and let's see if we can play with it a little bit.
I'll shift gears into dealing with grief and trauma. I follow lots of people on Twitter and stuff and social media, and every once in a while I run into a parent that obviously has a similar situation where they lost a child, like we did.
Yeah.
Yet, most of what they comment on is how tortured they are every day in their inability to find any reason to live. I mean, most of their posts are negative. They're very downer. They're very uninspiring. And you just want to give them a big hug. But you can't do that every single day to somebody. At some point, you have to find something internally. Something that makes you start looking at this in a different perspective. And again, for me, and you and I could spend a whole show talking about the afterlife and the concept of religion and all that. For me, as an
Yeah.
agnostic, as somebody who does not believe in the afterlife, my approach to dying and death is different. And it's probably, to be honest with you, Daniel, has helped me grieve in losing a child, because I don't believe in the fact that they're up in some better place and I'm going to die and meet them someday. I revolve to the fact that I'm meeting him right now. I'm creating heaven on earth, and I'm living in honor of my son. I'm not going to die to wait to meet him. And that has helped Jeff Johnston. Now, anybody listening that's overly religious is going to say, well, you're insane and whatever. Well, whatever. All I know is that my grieving skills are substantially better than a lot of people I know that have been through the same thing. And maybe it could be that I view death differently. And it's an honor to be alive. I don't fear death. And for those people I have lost, I'm honoring them by living the best quality life I can today, and to continue their story, like the book and the blogs and all that. So if that can help people out there that are struggling, I'm not telling people not to believe. I'm just telling you is to believe in yourself. That's the number one thing. My next blog is called Find Your Inner Superhero. And it's written solely on the concept that we are just obsessed with believing in things that are otherworldly to come in and save us. I mean, the number one franchise in movie history is Marvel Cinematic Theaters. And it's the concept of just humans need superheroes. We need something to come in and save us. And I'm like, no, you don't. You have it inside of you. You have the ability to be your own superhero. You just got to find it. It's in there. You're just not looking hard.
Yeah, that Superman, that's what Friedrich Nietzsche talks about, you know?
Right. He does, although he's got some other odd things he talks about, but
yeah, that's a deep rabbit hole there, isn't it?
But I think another thing you brought up, Nietzsche, is also the Stoic philosophy has helped me a lot too. I'm not sure how much you've delved into Stoicism, but I know a lot of my friends that have had traumatic events happen. This Stoic idea with Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus and Seneca, these are all famous Stoics that have written about basically life is trauma. And if you live life afraid of trauma or unable to deal with trauma, then life will consume you and your life will unravel. And the precious time we have here is going to have things happen to us that we're not going to enjoy, we're not going to like. And I
think. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Doesn't kill you, makes you stronger. So yeah.
Well, and what I like to do is read these different philosophies, and with Stoicism, I really think that it's important to set expectations. Part of the reason that I set the average dude is, hey, it doesn't matter what label that we have upon us. Sometimes whatever we can use to motivate ourselves. So if I kind of label myself as the average dude, if that gives me a little bit more energy to see if I can outrun the average dude, so to speak, then it works. And then with expectations with anything, I would rather be pleasantly surprised than have expectations that I don't meet. But then at the same time, I think it's important to look in that toolbox and to pull out this. I sometimes say, a delusion is only a delusion until somebody else believes it with you or it works, So go ahead and if you want to pull out the delusional hammer and use that, if that works, so to speak, then use that. Have a delusional positive outlook and see how that works. Kind of to your point earlier, hey, it's not like once you pull out that delusional hammer, you have to hold it perpetually. You can use these different psychological techniques, these different philosophies, and you can use it for a while, and if you say, hey, this is no longer working, you can put it back and you can try something else. So I think it's important to be flexible.
Yeah, I mean, I spent some time, and as I'm sure you do too, when you kind of throw your hat out in the ring there, that people will gravitate to you to ask you for advice, and I spent some time with a gentleman that's a friend of mine that's kind of going through some issues, that similar things that I kind of went through. And I think what I was trying to learn from the conversation was that there isn't a template. And you mentioned toolbox. I use quiver, arrow in the quiver. You use toolbox. Same methodology. And I like that fact. Is like, you know what? I don't have right answers. I can't tell you how to grieve if your child dies. I can't tell you how to quit drinking. I can tell you what helps me.
That's
And
right.
there are many other people that would adamantly deny everything that I just said, and it's helping them. Well, then try that idea. My objective is to get people to quit whatever they're abusing, whatever thing they think they're addicted to, whether it's a disease or not. It doesn't matter. It matters if you can find a way to quit. And that toolbox you mentioned, Daniel, is the key. Keep stuffing that toolbox full of things that you can, at times in need, you can pop that toolbox and say, maybe I'll use the average dude. I listened to him last week. Or maybe I'll use Jeff Johnston. Or maybe I'll use Russell Brand. Or maybe Sam Harris. Or I'll keep gravitating. And the goal is to whatever you're battling, to find a way to get past that. And that's what drives me every day, and I know that drives you. I can see it in your presentations that you make. As we wrap up, my alarm went off. We're at the 50-minute mark.
Well, I went fast.
I know it does when you're talking about things that interest you. Let me ask you a question. Where do you see your journey going this year, next year? Where do you have an end game? Do you have a goal in mind? Or are you just going to start cracking doors and plowing down roads and figuring out what you're going to do when you get there?
That's right. I think that I don't really have an end game as far as the average dude. I do think, to kind of continue down that letting go of the tool that we've been using. So just because a tool works for a while, we have the tendency to say, I can't put this hammer up. It's been so good for driving these nails. But once the nail's in, having the strength to say it's okay to put that hammer down and do what's best for you now. And so with that, again, I don't have to, for me, I feel better when I am not locked into something. I've got to make the average dude work, and I've got to take, I'm more of a sprinter than a marathon runner. And I like to keep my energy up. So I'm going to follow my energy, and with the idea of continuing to grow, but not necessarily all in the same direction. I like to be able to use that flexibility to follow whatever path feels right to me. I will say this, Jeff, I've been doing a lot of reading and I can feel a shift coming. And I don't know exactly, but that kind of is exciting to me because I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but I've had a lot of new and different thoughts. And I like to challenge things that I think, if you were to talk to me, hey, tomorrow I might look at something that I said today and say, you know what, average dude, you are average and that's not right. I reserve the right to change my mind completely. Because
you'll never be average, dude. Hey, I want to tell you, you mentioned about books. I just finished a book and I posted this on LinkedIn. A great book by drummer Neil Peart, who died almost a year ago. It was January 7th last year. I don't know if you're a Rush fan.
I'm not. I know who Rush is. That's about.
Neil Peart, arguably the greatest drummer of all time, but he lost his daughter at 19 years old in a car accident. 2 years later, his wife died of cancer, and he got on his BMW motorcycle and he drove 55,000 miles, and just drove 55,000 miles to find a reason to live. That's what he writes in his book. And he's got a book called Ghostwriter I just finished, and it's an awesome read if you just need a kick in the butt. If you need to get off your pity party and to see, like Steve Grant, to see somebody that's not just had one horrendous tragic event, but then had it followed up by a second one, and to live the life that they live with such honor and love of nature and awe of the unanswerable questions of life. And just not willing to accept anything, always be learning. I'm like, that is kind of where I want to hang my hat someday. Someone look back at me and say, the best thing I loved about Jeff, other than he's a big Iron Maiden fan, is he always was learning. He never, ever was satisfied with the concept of knowing something. And that is probably something I was born with. I have to say, I've always been inquisitive. With ADD, I think you're never satisfied with knowing something. Do you deal with that as well? Always trying to challenge yourself?
I like to feel energized. I like to feel passionate, and I don't, I'm not the one to just, I think we can grind. We hear grind and grit and all of that sort of thing, and that's good. I think that my grind is more just I want to keep progressing, and I'm not necessarily on the same path, but I want to have the same energy and passion in this, and just keep moving forward. If that makes sense.
It does make sense. And I think what I'll do is, how can people reach you? What are the easiest ways if somebody wants to tap into your brain?
I would say the best way to get me is really through LinkedIn. I mean, that's where I do most of my posts and some of my thought experiments, I would call it, is through LinkedIn. So if they can find me there. I do know if you search The Average Dude, Daniel Allison on Google, you can get to my podcast, but I connect with most people through LinkedIn. So,
well, I know the people that have met you through me have actually extremely enjoyed following you. And I know COVID has kind of, actually probably knowing you've been building up a war chest of things to present. I doubt you've been sitting around feeling sorry for yourself that you got COVID.
I'm excited about some of the thoughts.
I had COVID. I told you nothing happened to me except I couldn't go scuba diving. They wouldn't allow us to fly out of the country. So,
well, hey, I know you like the rock bands and the big hair bands. How about Cinderella and Don't Know What You've Got Till It's Gone? You remember that ballad?
Absolutely. How can you not?
And so I've been thinking a lot about that one. Just a normal, average, everyday day in our life that we have that we feel somewhat normal. All of a sudden you don't appreciate that feeling of feeling normal until you don't have it. So one thing I've been thinking about is just feeling healthy, not having something. I mean, obviously some people have serious illnesses, but just feeling our best. And then having that power of the moment, then, there's all these potentialities in each and every moment. When we feel good and we're alive, that's a powerful state. So.
Well, I tell you what, I've been very fortunate, like I said, to meet a lot of great people, and I have been honored to have been able to hook up with you for what seems like a long time, but it's only been about a year.
Yeah.
I look forward to
That's been great. I feel fortunate to have hooked up with you, and it's just a testament to LinkedIn. And like you say, maybe we would never have met had we not had LinkedIn or COVID or these negative things happen. So back to our stoic philosophy there.
Well, like I said, I appreciate you taking the time today. Hopefully you can get through this. I'm off on Friday for a scuba diving trip with my son that's been canceled twice.
Nice.
So I'm looking forward to that. And definitely try to catch our podcast because, like I said, the first one's going to be pretty emotional with my boys. I mean, it's I'm giving people the opportunity to be a fly on the wall and hear the father and his two sons talk about the loss of a brother and a son to addiction and kind of how we've survived as a family. And I think if anyone's got children or thinking about having children or themselves are battling, I really think that the hour that people watch, I've watched it 3 times already, and as the host, I seem to learn something every time I watch it.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm excited. And again, I'll let you go on with your day, and I'm sure our paths will cross here shortly. But any last words of wisdom you wanted to throw out before you go off into average dude land?
No, I would just say be the master of the moment. So
I like that. Well, thanks again. Appreciate our friendship, and we'll touch base soon. And like I said, you're no average dude to me, man.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Right,
enjoyed it.
Care.